Anyway, Steve will help us out. So let's give Steve a big hand. On the way here, I thought to myself, I'm not going to wait till the bell rings. I'm going to be a little short and hopefully offer some clarity. My name's Steve Sturgeon. I've been a resident in Canyon Country now for 35 years. We moved here in 1980. My wife Julie is in the audience. And we have two children, both of them who went through the Hart School District, through La Mesa and Canyon High School. They live here in Santa Clarita. They're up in the Saugus area. And my daughter is a teacher at Rancho Pico. She's the teacher of the year in 2013 for Rancho Pico as a PE teacher. My 87-year-old father and my den mother are seated below. My den mother. So my 87-year-old father and my den mother from when I was a Cub Scout, okay, basically really kind of guides you into what started me in volunteer service. As I watched my parents do it, and I watched my parents' friends do it. This is my 21st year on school boards. I was 5 years with the Sulphur Springs District, and this is my 16th year with the Hart School District. I'm a businessman here in Santa Clarita. My wife is a CPA owning her own practice. We have a company that's called Confidential Data Corporation, and we basically scan, store, and destroy material. If you've ever heard about identity theft, which I know we all have, or concern over private information, it's our job to take custody of that information and destroy it so that it's not available to others. There are numerous positions that I've served throughout my tenures, and there's a 2-page document in the back that'll go through bio, but my bio and relative positions, I'm not going to bore you with that level of detail. I do serve at the state level for the California School Boards Association as a delegate. That's an elected position by my peer trustees in this region, which includes Antelope Valley and Santa Clarita Valley. I'm one of 250 in the state, and we meet twice a year to discuss policy and legal issues that affect or impact education across the state in approximately 1,000 school districts from north to south. I have worked on the board now for the 16 years, and when I started, I attended basically every meeting over the course of a year and a half. As I was a member of the Sulphur Springs Board, and I wanted to know what was happening at the Hart School Board, and there were some issues that I saw that I had an agenda for at the time. So I attended for about a year and a half, and I would raise my hand in the audience, and by 10:30, 11 o'clock, the board on the dais would have no idea who the guy was in the audience, and at that time I think I still had some brown hair, I'm not sure. And I'd raise my hand and I'd ask about budget and I'd ask about issues, and over time I chose to run in 1999. And I came forward with what I thought was my agenda. My agenda at the time was facilities. We had 40% of our student population in those days that were housed in modular buildings. We had 2-part lunches and 2-part recesses and late starts and schedules across the district, and our students were desperately in need of additional classroom space, and so were our teachers. As I sit on the board today, we have built 4 schools, 2 high schools, 2 junior high schools over the course of the 16 years. We have had 2 bond series that have been approved by the voters, Measure V and now Measure SA. We have several projects and facilities. If we combine our bond measures with our developer fees and the like, we have in the neighborhood of roughly $500 million that we're going to be spending over the next 2 to 4 years. That includes 2-story classroom buildings at Hart High School, Plaza Rita Junior High School, Sierra Vista Junior High School, and a magnificent project in Castaic. The issue of attendance came up, so I'm just going to address that straight up. Castaic High School has roughly 1,400 roughly 1,400 students in their school district prior to the recent fiscal crisis that we've had in this state. They've lost about 300, so that takes them down to about 1,100. The school is designed for a capacity of 2,650 students, but in fact, I'm going to be down to my 5 minutes are up. We're going to expect that they're going to contribute somewhere between 1,100 and 14. So I'll move to questions.
Hi, Stacy Fortner again. I just wanted to say that's a very impressive resume, and so I'm a little surprised that it's taken so long to build Castaic High School and to address some of the local issues such as fare and the pay-to-play. And I'm hoping that you can address some of the transparency issues around the pay-to-play.
Okay. Is that 3 questions in 90 seconds each, or? Relative to Castaic High School, I've been the major proponent of that since about 2002 when we did pass Measure V. We spent roughly 5 years dealing with a couple of developers that we expected to pay for the development of the school and as a turnkey school. Northlake Development up in Castaic was one of the primary ones. That went to the county at the time. The county opposed or would not provide permits for that project. But if you know what school funding is like, we have something where the state provides 50% of the funding and the school district is required to provide the other half. So the other half comes from developer fees or mitigation fees, and that particular developer was going to contribute roughly $40 million to complement the state's participation at the time. That project never went through. That developer went Chapter 11, and that project went away. We began, subsequent to that, we began in about 2006, 2007, where we were analyzing, I believe, a total of 11 different properties in Castaic with the Castaic community and the Castaic Town Council. We had a great deal of resistance from the Castaic community at the time relative to location of a school, but subsequently it came to an agreement with them that one of 2 properties would be sufficient.
If you're taking it to 2 questions, go ahead, take it.
I'm not finished with the first one, but what happened was that we had basically Hasley Sloan or Romero Canyon property that came down from 11 to 7 to 3, and then finally 2 pieces of property that were analyzed. We put them through a test with our architects and our designers for quality control and the like, and Romero Canyon property came out to be the site of choice. We had an estimated budget at the time for the school. That was in 2010 when we approved it, and that's when we began seeking permits from the county. We have spent from 2010 until last year getting the grading permit. We spent from October of last year until about a month ago, 3 or 4 weeks ago, in getting the upward road permit. But the school is now, I will say, in progress and moving along. We anticipate that the plans will come out of DSA, out of the state, approved at their initial form in the next week or so. So we should be moving forward. Pay-to-play and the FAIR Act, I think, were the 2 that you mentioned. Fundamentally, in the case of the FAIR Act, I would disagree with Mr. Taven or Ms. Olson that there's a delay in the process. I myself and I think Ms. Mercado-Fortine were 2 of the advocates of when Andrew came before the board on each occasion, and we pursued with the district what our requirements were from the state, what kind of curriculum was available, when did we have to implement it, what was happening. And I know that I can't speak for any of the other board members, I know that I continue to pursue that with district staff in terms of obligation of us to ensure that we were doing what we could. In my most recent conversation with Superintendent Vicki on this subject was earlier this year, where she went through a list of meetings and sessions that had been set up with teachers specifically on how to do a better job of introducing curriculum and information related to the FAIR Act in the classroom so that we could be ready for this year.
What are your thoughts on Common Core and how the district is implementing it?
In my 20 years with both elementary and the secondary education, it is a constant struggle to seek ways to improve the achievement levels of our kids in class. Sometimes it's been fewer students in a classroom. Sometimes it's been more hours or time. Sometimes it's block scheduling, and sometimes it's testing. Common Core, I think, for students of today and our future are geared toward technology. They need to be critical thinkers. They need to be able to analyze not just the rote of a problem in any course subject, but why it's that way, and are there multiple answers to a particular problem. So I think Common Core is long-term is going to be good. It's a tough implementation process across the spectrum, but I think overall it's going to do a good job.
I didn't mean to cut you short.
That's all right.
Okay, I'm looking at this article that was in the Wall Street Journal today, and it certainly appears that the introduction of additional technology to schools is causing school scores to drop. So I think we are on a completely different route. You're saying that technology is going to lead to higher test scores. It appears to me that additional technology is leading to lower test scores, and I just feel like we're completely on the wrong route.
Right.
So whether you want to comment or not, I'm going to leave that to you.
Oh, absolutely. When I say technology, I'm not talking about strict the use of technology to make a decision. I'm talking about the use of technology in the process. Any of your children, grandchildren, students, and the like, when you ask them a question, the first thing that they might do when you ask them a question is not pick up a book. What they may do is go to their phone, their tablet, or their computer in order to get an answer. We find that in business and industry. We know it's happening in the school. We've placed 9,000 tablets in our junior highs, one computer for every student. Our school scores that just came out, first round, so we have nothing to compare them to, in the Hart district, higher at both for our district, higher than the county and the state levels, straight off the board. So we will begin analyzing them for subgroups to see what our achievement gaps are between the lower performing and the higher performing students in our classrooms. But fundamentally, the teachers, as Andrew said, the teachers were introduced to Common Core over a year in advance of when it was required to implement. The board questioned that. We questioned because there was some negative press out there about early introduction. We heard it at CSBA at the state level about early introduction. There was a lot of discussion, active discussion between trustees across the state. But overall, our teachers and staff appear to be satisfied. And when I met with the association a week ago, they agreed that we are doing the professional development required in our district to make sure that our teachers are prepared.
So as a governing board member for the William S. Hart Union High School District, what do you see as your priorities as a governing board member for the next 4 to 6 years, and maybe that of the board as a collective?
Funding for this district is always going to be an issue. And it is that because this valley was classified as a low profile, not low profile. The word low in it. So basically, this district was considered a farming community back in the 50s, and that's when the state elected to determine how much money we got per student. If you look at our average daily attendance dollars that we get per student in this district, it is significantly less than surrounding districts in LA Unified, Ventura, Oxnard, and beyond. We still do an incredible job as a district, our teachers and staff do, in developing and producing students of quality and academic performance. We are recognized countywide, statewide, and nationally in terms of what our schools have done academically across the board. Does that answer your question?
So, increasing funding, looking at better ways of funding.
Funding, we're monitoring it. During my term, we've had situations that we've been fiscally responsible. So at one point in time, we had roughly $50 million in a reserve fund. The unions work with us very well in terms of being able to maintain that and retain that. We were deficit spending over the course of a number of years, and we knew that because the funding coming out of the state dropped significantly from 2007 to 2013. We are in a new funding formula now. It's called local control funding, and they stipulate exactly where money can go and how it can be spent. So we have, and what programs we're addressing with that money. So the funding formula has changed. We still get less than surrounding major districts do, but we have to pay attention to it because we still have a deficit number that we're looking at, and we have to ensure that we're going to be in the black at least 3 years in advance on an ongoing basis every year.
How do you get and remain in touch with today's youth and their needs and interests?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear your question.
How do you get and remain in touch with today's youth and their needs and interests?
One of the things, quite frankly, that I'm proud of is that there's been numerous issues that have come to the district, whether it was from students or teachers and the like. I have always requested direct communication to the board. I have done that to the teachers, I've done that to classified staff, and I've done that with students. I get letters from students on a regular basis. I respond to every letter and every email that I get related to a topic. I don't make the individual decisions. The board doesn't necessarily make every individual decisions, but it's my job to make certain that somebody at the district level is communicating back for those things. I've had points in time where there was an issue related to boundaries. I received up to 2,000 emails. I responded to every single email back to the parents. I made special visits, coffee visits and the like, to let them know exactly what the purpose or process was on a particular topic. So when students came to us from Bowman because they felt a concern for the safety at Golden Triangle and Centerpoint at the time, we went back to the city with them. We got crosswalks built for them, and we created a safety measure. They stood before us, just like Andrew has stood before us on a topic, and we will follow through. Things don't have. I had interests when I started on this board that I would like to have done. Some of those have been done. Some of them have not. New ones have come up, and progress is slow. I'm one of 5, and there's 2,000 employees in the district that need to concur as we make changes.
Mr. Sturgeon, you just mentioned there are things that you would have liked to have accomplished, but you haven't been able to. Can you tell us a little bit about what those are and what you can commit to doing if you were to be reelected?
Let's see. Well, facilities was one of them. I think I've done an excellent job in helping or supporting that. A balanced budget became very important over time as we went forward. Assisting with individual school requirements, whether they were booster clubs, policies, staffing issues, counselors, the ability to improve or advance the focus on A to G requirements for college, the interest in career tech education. That's been a topic now for me for probably 8 years. We will hopefully realize much more of that for 2 reasons. The hiring of Dr. Doyle, who is responsible for our career tech education, has joined the district last year under the throes of Ms. Superintendent Engbrick. And secondly, our Castaic High School has a specific set of buildings that it's our intent and focus that those will be career tech, similar to what COC has at their Canyon Country campus. There'll be flexible buildings that we can change and alter from a physical standpoint to accommodate industry as industry changes over time, because we've all heard the line, we don't know what jobs are going to be 5 years from now. We know what's needed today. We don't know what's needed 5 years from now.
In an interview you did with SCV today, you said parental involvement is critical. What have you done as a board member to increase parental involvement in this district?
Over time, a couple of things, and Ms. Solomon has been critical in this process. We have added PTSAs, which are similar to PTAs at the junior high level. Our DAC committee has, at points, been extremely successful at being able to be that liaison between the district staff and the schools in terms of what's going on in the schools. Right now, I think the DAC needs some energy infused in it. It doesn't have the same level of support that I'd like to have it. One of my questions is what topic or project are you working on this year? I found out last year they're really not. They're listening. They're getting an agenda put in front of them. They go through the throes of an update in terms of what the status of something is. And they thank everybody for coming and they leave the room. We had situations where we talked about drugs. We talked about bullying, attendance issues. I mean, there were topics that the DAC took on, met with people, brought them back to the district as problem and potential resolutions, and then the district took some action on them.
Just to follow on to that, Mr. Sturgeon, as a former member of the Hart DAC, I can confirm that what you just said is true. It was actually rather difficult to get them to engage and be interested in talking through issues. And so it seemed to me that they were very unengaged, the parents and the students, and that there was a lack of communication between them and the board. So I guess what I'm not hearing from your answer that I'd like to hear more from you is as a board member, what are you willing to commit to do to increase parent and student engagement with the board so that that situation changes going forward?
For me personally, one of the things I intend to get more involved with, and I've spoken to the superintendent already on this, is that the DAC committee needs to ask what's important to the students and potentially the parents that are on the DAC committee. Why are they there? What are they there for? They're not there to take 2 hours out of their time or 2.5 hours out of their time 5 times a year. That's not what's important. So I would expect that my DAC representative would take a valued interest, would report back to me on a regular basis, and each DAC representative would do the same. I would expect that the students involved in DAC or the parents involved in DAC, okay, and the teachers involved in DAC would also take time to report back to the district on a more regular basis. That we don't need to wait for an end-of-year report to find out what an issue was or wasn't. I'm a big believer in communication. I talk a lot. Okay? So I would like to hear from people. In order to make things move, you need to hear from people. If I hear from one, that's a small voice. If I hear from 30, it's a bigger voice. When Mr. Ferdman was talking about the attendance here, in all my election debates, okay, this is the largest crowd we've ever captured. And we've had 6 candidates or 7 candidates in the past, and this is the largest crowd. I've stood in front of 15 people, and 12 of them were related, so.
Not too many of us are related here tonight, Mr. Sturgeon.
No, 12 of them are related to me.
Oh, okay. You mentioned facilities, and this came to mind here. What level of responsibility do you and your colleagues bear for cost overruns and delays on various school bond funded projects like Castaic High School?
Castaic High School isn't over budget at this point in time.
It's not delayed at all?
It was only been delayed by the permitting process that I described to you.
So there's no overfunding or off budget
Not
issues?
Not as of now. Our budget with the developer who's doing the grading and preparing the site is a fixed budget. It's and then we hope to enter into a same kind of contract, okay, with the developer for construction purposes when we start to go vertical.
Michelle Jenkins, COC Board again. I'd like to give you an opportunity to comment a little bit about. I think there's a misconception on the part of a lot of people in the public how much discretionary dollars you have available to do discretionary things. That's my question, was addressed that earlier. How big of a percentage your budget is made up of salaries and benefits for employees? I think people are generally unaware of that. It's the same for us, so I'd like you to comment on that.
Out of our $200 million budget this year, 85% of it is salaries and benefits. Then we have restricted funds totaling roughly, this year now with the funding formulas, totaling roughly another $10 million. So we have somewhere in the neighborhood of $10 to $20 million of monies that we have to work with. Those monies include things like what they call the administrator's allocation at the sites, where they have the ability to spend money on site-level expenses under their own discretion, or for specific purposes.
Which is very different from the private sector. People are always amazed to hear that much of the public sector budget is taken up by salary and benefits, but it is. It's very different from the private sector.
Well, coming from the private sector, I will tell you that, and we have an outstanding association, but there's no question that when we sit down to budget, and they were waiting for the unaudited actuals that we just released last Wednesday, to see how much money is left. Because when they look at how much money is left, and they're in full negotiation this year for a full contract, meaning they can open up any item that they want to talk about, days, hours, vacation, salary, benefits, and the like. They're looking at the amount of money we have that's not designated for something else that we can, that's discretionary. And when they look at that, they're going to calculate 1% increase across the district is about $1 million. So if you hear that they get a 5% increase, you know that we just spent $5 million we committed this year and every year thereafter to the association or to the unions. Their work. Yes.
I'm sorry, I just have one follow-up about Castaic High School. You had mentioned the permits. Are the permits in hand for the roads, sidewalks, street lights that would be leading up to Castaic High School?
No.
And that was the shortest answer you've had.
Maybe as you can tell by my comments, this is a very engaged board, and it takes a lot of effort. I spend on the average of minimum 10 hours and a maximum of 40 hours in the course of every week on board-related items or activities. Our board reading package can be an inch thick, it can be 8 inches thick. That comes to us on a Thursday night, a Friday, and it needs to be read and discussed by Monday or Tuesday with staff in terms of the material, the content. I serve on 2 key committees. One's called Finance and Audit, and the other one now is called the Facilities Modernization and Construction Management Committee, where we, myself and one other board member, have an opportunity to discuss and review with our people in facilities exactly where we are and what the status of projects are, so that we can bring them back to the full board, or at least be able to have dialogue with the district in open session more knowledgeably. I've committed 21 years, and I'm interested in committing 4 more. I'm not sure that came out right. I'm interested in holding this position for 4 more years. I believe I have the knowledge, the experience, the background, and certainly the passion to deliver what this community needs. At some point, this community is going to grow to 500,000 people per county projections as Newhall Ranch grows, as the rest of Castaic grows, as the rest of Sierra Highway up here through Vasquez Canyon grow. This will be a much larger, thriving community, and we have additional schools and resources that need to be brought into this district over time. We have lots of challenges. It'll be this board, the next board after the November election, and boards to come that'll make that happen. We have an incredible group of community spirit in this valley that helps to make things happen. If you attend any of from Canyon Country to Valencia and Stevenson Ranch, any of the community events, you're going to see a number of the same people in each of the areas present to ensure that what's happening in their community is the right thing for their families and what they're doing. We do that from site to site. We do that from our junior highs to our high schools because now they articulate directly. We do that from our high schools into the College of the Canyons much, much better as we continue to grow. 65% of our students go to COC. They now have a university center where you can get a baccalaureate and never leave this valley. It's astounding, it's impressive, and it turns out a quality of students and achievement that is really not seen in other valleys and other areas because we're encapsulated by the mountains or Ventura County on the sides. So we're very fortunate to be here. I thank you for your time. I thank you for coming out. I thank you for inviting us. And vote for Steve Sturgeon when you get to the